Well, looks like COVID could come back. I'm not saying it will, but it could. And there might try to do lockdowns again like they did before. But some churches are making preparation for if it ever does happen again by putting bylaws into their constitution. And one of those men who has done that is Pastor Stacy Shiflett. We're going to talk about that in today's video. Don't go away. All right, guys, go ahead and smite that like button. And as always, go ahead and check out our book, Calling Evil Good, The Live Christian Rock and Roll, now available on Amazon. We are talking about that book a lot, and I thank you guys for watching that and getting that book. Pastor Stacy Shiflett's back at it again. I love that guy. He's a great Bible preacher. If you don't follow their channel, the Calvary Baptist Dundalk, Maryland, you can check out their YouTube channel there. He puts all his sermons up, and I think you'll really enjoy it. One that I would recommend is this one, Modern Day Molech. Boy, what a red-hot sermon that is, buddy. He was absolutely all over it there, and I appreciate him. And one thing I want you to know, if you look at the internet, you would think, and it's not, I'm not like dissing anybody by saying this, but you would think like the only guy who stood up against the COVID lockdowns was John MacArthur, and that's simply not so. There were a number of different guys who stood up and stood faithful during that time, and whatever you chose to do is fine with me, but there were some men who said, "Nuh-uh, ain't gonna happen here," and one of those men was Pastor Stacy Shiflett. He actually was on the news when it happened, but they just passed another bylaw at their church here recently. I want you to see this. This is from protestia.com, and they've got some good articles on there. Go check them out. Baptist church that prominently resisted COVID lockdowns passes church bylaw pledging to defy government on future constraints. And so there's Pastor Shiflett when he got he actually was given a county mandate, an order that said you had to shut down the church, and he stood in the pulpit and ripped it in half in front of everybody. And so a Baptist church known for being one of the first churches in the country to be fined for opening the doors during the COVID lockdown, if not the first, and who made international news after their pastor publicly tore up a governmental cease and desist letter from the pulpit, has unanimously passed a new church bylaw formalizing that will never again close their church under threat by any government. In June 2020, the Baltimore County Department of Permits fined Calvary Baptist Church in Dundalk, led by Stacy Shiflett, $500 for their May 17th service. The government accused them of having unsafe structures for having more than 10 parishioners in their building. Even though they had a 600-seat auditorium, Stacy in turn publicly tore up the edict, declaring, "Newsflash, Pharaoh doesn't get to dictate to God's people how they worship their God." Though many people at the time offered to pay the fine, Shiflett refused all aid offers. The case then against them was eventually dropped, but it wouldn't have mattered if it hadn't. When reached out for comment, he told our reporter, "I told my church I would go to jail before we paid a fine. This is America, and that bottom line, we determined to never shut our doors again. It violates our understanding of Scripture and is a flagrant violation of our First Amendment rights. The church, which presently runs 350 congregants in a Sunday morning service, has 150 qualified voting members. During their service passed a bylaw that said receiving unanimous support from the church in a secret ballot." So here's what the amendment said. And by the way, if you feel this way, and I hope that you do, I would encourage all churches who watch our channel to go ahead and do the same procedure. Put this in your bylaws and maybe even word it exactly like this. That'd be fine. I don't think they would mind at all. "We strongly believe in the biblical command to worship God together in person." Where's Andy Stanley when you're saying all that? Stinking liberal. The word church means gathering of citizens called out of their homes into some public place and assembly. If there is no gathering together, there is no church. Andy Stanley, you loser. "We are blessed to be able to share our church services via live stream with our elderly shut-ins and missionaries around the world. However, we do not believe that a live stream or a recorded service is a biblical replacement for the command to assemble together. Furthermore, we do not recognize nor will we comply with any outside edict, laws, mandate, restriction, or regulation by an ecclesiastical body or government entity interfering with our biblical and First Amendment constitutional right to assemble and worship as a congregation. If forced to choose between the mandates of God and the mandates of man, we will choose to obey God. And there's all those verses there, Hebrews 10:25, Acts 5:29, 1 Corinthians 16:2, all those right there. And so there you go. And that's Brother Shiflett. So I just want you guys to encourage you to know that there is a broad group of people out there who are standing and being faithful in these last days, and Brother Shiflett's one of them. We used him in our God's Millstone documentary, and we've done some interviews with him on this channel as well. Some of them are available for channel members, and so we encourage you guys to become a channel member and check all that out. But I think that a lot of people struggle with this. I mean, I even, during my time, I had like a bunch of folks like David Knight. He was with InfoWars at the time. He reached out to me, wanted to talk to me about the idea of Romans 13 versus, Acts chapter 5. And let me just show you those real quick if I can. But you got Acts chapter 5. What's that verse right there? It says, let's see, right there, Acts 5:29. Let me pull that up for everybody. And that's the one that says that you should obey God more than man, or whatever right here. Then Peter said, the apostles answered, said, we ought to obey God rather than men. And so that's the idea that you can't preach Jesus. And that was a government body telling us, you cannot meet, can't preach Jesus. You're causing a disturbance. You're offending people. You can't preach that doctrine. Okay, and that was his response. But then also you got like Romans 13, a lot of liberal Christians, a lot of evangelical folks were like, when the government says anything, you ought to just do it because that's just being a good citizen. And it says, Romans 13:1, let every soul be subject to the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. But you have to read, you can't just take one verse out of context like this. You have to read the whole passage and take it into consideration. And so what says right here, Romans 13:3, for rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Will thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise the same. For he is a minister of God to thee for good. Now, do you notice you notice the phrases good and evil here that we're talking about? If a government is punishing evildoers, punishing the cartels, and punishing the terrorists, and punishing the drug lords or whatever, he's punishing the evildoers, and that is a God-ordained government. That is what God has given the government to do. But when you're arresting grandma for going to church, and all she's going to do is walk into a building, sit down and hear a sermon and sing a few songs, and you are punishing them, you are not doing what Romans 13 says. You're just not. And this is the big problem we have in America, and this is why it does matter who gets elected, because if you have people like these far-left screeching libtards that are so anti-God, anti-Bible, and everything, they don't even understand what good and evil is. They don't understand the difference between the two. So if you find somebody who literally is calling evil good and good evil, then you're going to have a problem on your hands. These people are like celebrating abortion, but going after the church people. That's when you have a problem. And so the Bible actually, lays that out there. For the rulers are not a terror to good works. Well, that's like when they were fining churches for meeting, they were terrorizing good works. And Brother Shiflett's the one that actually, he went on Laura Ingraham and Fox News, and he said that I'm angry that the bars are open and that the liquor joint is open, but the church is shut down. And actually, Donald Trump I'm pretty sure Donald Trump saw Stacey Shiflett say that on the news, because Trump at the time was president, was watching Fox News a lot. President Trump actually said that not long after that. So I'm pretty sure he got that from Brother Shiflett. So, but what happens when it's inverted? What happens when they start terrorizing good works and start, leaving the evil alone? What happens whenever you get a fine for going to church, but then the guy who's, dealing heroin across the street, they just ignore him? What happens when you punish the people for going and having a prayer meeting, but you leave the people having an abortion alone? That's the problem that we face. And so I encourage all churches today, if you believe this way about this particular issue, and I think you should, then you should actually go and just set these same bylaws. I'll just copy it, paste it, put it in your own bylaws. Amen. I think that'd be fine. And so that'd be good. But Brother Shiflett's back at it. Go check I say that jokingly, of course. Love that guy. He's a great preacher. And go check out his YouTube channel, Calvary Baptist Church, Dundalk, Maryland. You will enjoy some great Bible preaching there. And go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you guys are new. And hit the like button and share this video with your friends. God bless you, friend. Have a good day. We'll see you soon.